Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining UI UX Global Summit 23 organized by Geekle. I'm excited to present you today the topic that's revolutionizing the way we approach design and development is design system. We'll explore what is a design system, why we need it, how it significantly improves our workflow and collaboration, how to create one, and some general tips, do's, and don'ts. So, what is a design system? Design system is a comprehensive set of guidelines, components, and tools that serve as a single source of truth for design and development of digital products. A product without design system is usually inconsistent, messy, has so many flows that users can't get around. Like, for example, this house. If you look closely at this house, the bottom part is really old and the top part is new and white, but even drainages are different. It looks weird basically, and it's a typical case when you try to incorporate a new design system to an ongoing product. On the other hand, let's take another building which had the design system from the scratch, and we all know this building. It's probably one of the most recognizable buildings in the world. The design system has some key parts to it. First of all, design principles. Principles are fundamental ideas and philosophies that guide the overall design process. A lot of there depends on the brand identity, the brand's positioning itself toward market and users. It can be the brand can be like human centered or content first, action first, depend on their goals and what they try to achieve in the market. The next is UI components. Basically, those are reusable models of building blocks for creating user interfaces, from simple checkbox to a complicated model where you have to do complex actions. The third key part would be design patterns. Design patterns are solutions to recurring design problems. Those can be as small as simple error messages or success messages, or as complex as a pattern of navigation flow through some deep settings menu. The next one would be the style guides. The style guide is basically documentation of visual language, including typography, colors, spacings, grids, etc. This is one of the most important things, and trust me, it has its benefits. Please keep documentation. Please keep versioning your every state of every single element. It will help you in the future a lot. I know it's a boring work. I know designers mostly don't like to document everything, but this will help, and developers will definitely love you as well as product owners, project managers. Even you yourself will you will love yourself. Yeah, design tooling is basically communication between designers and developers. It can be as simple as Figma, Sketch, XD. It can be also storybooks, Jira tickets, or some just as simple as screenshots. It also can be the design tooling, like, or Slack, Microsoft Teams, whatever you use to communicate. But basically, always be in communication with your developers. It's very crucial to be in communication with them. I will get back to this again. So why do we need design system? The first and foremost is consistency. Will be talking a lot about consistency, because consistency is what makes your users feel comfortable with the look and feel of your design. They will be familiar with your design. Consistency also helps you as a designer, developers, the team members, because you use less components there. Instead of the like million types of buttons, you can use only one type. Same goes for the font, which basically brings us to the next point, which is increased efficiency. Increased efficiency is basically can be gathered with the library of reusable components and patterns. The designers, the developers can share and save their time instead of reinventing the wheel. The next would be enhanced collaboration. Enhanced collaboration is basically a shared language between designers, developers, and other team members. They foster better communication by providing clear guidelines and expectations, making it easier to share knowledge, maintain a shared vision, and reduce misunderstanding, misinterpretations. So streamlined maintenance, a design system simplifies the process of updating and refining designs, making it easier to keep products up to date and aligned with the latest best practices. This ensures that your product remains current and competitive in the ever-evolving digital world. Scalability and adaptability. Design systems enable organizations to grow and evolve their products while still maintaining the familiar user experience. By providing solid foundations for design, a design system allows for seamless expansion and adaptation to new platform devices and use cases. Accessibility and inclusivity. Design systems encourage adherence to accessibility best practices, ensuring that your product caters to users with varying abilities. By incorporating ability guidelines and principles into your design system, you promote a more inclusive and user friendly experience for everyone. Now let's get to the atomic design. What is an atomic design? It's a powerful methodology for creating a modular, scalable, and maintainable design systems. We will discuss the building blocks of atomic design, including elements, atoms, molecules, explore how these components work together to create comprehensive components library, which is hierarchical and basically clear to understand the structure. First of all, the smallest particle of the atomic design methodology is elements. Elements is basically the foundation of visual components such as colors, typography, icons, etc. Then comes atoms. Atoms are the smallest functional UI components such as buttons, input, labels, switches, etc. Molecules are a combination of atoms that form more complex UI components, such as navigation menus, some product cards, forms, etc. The structure allows for efficient updates and maintenance as changes the elements or atoms can propagate throughout the entire design system. In atomic design, changes to an element or atom can have significant impact on overall design. Updating the color of an element can affect all atoms and molecules that use that color, creating a ripple effect throughout the design system. This highlights the importance of careful planning and consideration when making these changes to the foundational components of the atomic design. So, how to handle atoms in the design system? There are some tips. First of all, keep it simple. Elements like button, checkbook, radios should be simple and easy to understand. Avoid complex designs that can confuse users. Again, consistency is the key. It's important. Ensure that buttons are the same, checkboxes are the same, radios, even the distance between label and radio button is the same. It should be familiar. It should be intuitive for the users to understand. Use appropriate sizes, buttons, checkboxes, radios that should be clickable. If it's mobile, they should be tappable. It should be comfortable for the user. Use appropriate color. Use colors that are consistent with the brand and provide visual cues for users. Red goes for error, green for success. Primary is always contrasting. Secondary is not that contrasting. Now let's go to the colors. Colors are one of the most important things in the design system. Okay, I know I will be talking a lot about the most one of the most important things, but trust me, colors on the top, like in the top five. So colors create visual identity and have an emotional impact. Establish contrast and hierarchy, ensure accessibility, create consistency, and enable innovation. By using colors strategically, designers can create designs that are engaging, effective, and visually aligned with the brand. Here are some tips if you're just starting up. Choose a primary color palette. Select a primary color palette that represents your brand, establishes a visual identity. Choose colors that are consistent with your brand, personality, and tone. Then use complementary colors. Basically, we don't have time. Unfortunately, we don't have time to dive deep in the color theory, but complementary colors accentuate the primary ones. Establish color psychology. Color can evoke emotions and influence behaviors. Like red color indicates it's an error. User know it's an error. He gets back, or he or she. Green is a success. They are happy. They know they were able to buy the product or whatever it is. Next, establish color hierarchy. Primary color indicates, like, say, by clicking save, you know that it's a primary color, it's a call to action, and the secondary is cancel. You're canceling it. So with color, you can accentuate the main action, the needed actions in that feature, page, or whatever. Consider accessibility. Always consider there are some people they can hardly differentiate colors, or like in example in the product that I'm in one of our products of my company, a lot of users are not very young and they have hard time differentiating like hover and selected states, for example. And there should be a good contrast for those people to understand difference. Use colors sparingly. Don't overuse colors. It can be overwhelming and distracting. Use colors sparingly to draw attention to the important elements. And as always, taste and iterate. Taste, see which work, see which doesn't work. Remember, colors are a crucial part, and when used effectively, they can enhance the user experience and create a strong visual identity for your brand. Now, let's get to the next part, typography, another very important part of the design system. Typography is essential in design system because it improves readability, conveys brand personality, creates consistency, establishes hierarchy, and enhances aesthetics. First of all, choose appropriate fonts. Fonts shouldn't like in products with many big tables. You shouldn't use any italics. Don't use on web interfaces some artistic fonts because they are hard to read. Usually we use sans serifs because they work well on the web, especially on bigger products. Select fonts that are legible, they're scalable, they are versatile. Keep in mind that the license also, you don't want to use SF Pro on a web product which some user on Android can use, and later you can be sued by Apple because you use the font without checking up like can you use it or not. Uh, then establish hierarchy with the typography. A clear hierarchy of the font sizes can establish what is important, what is title, what is body text. Always establish hierarchy. The next tip would be limit the number of fonts, because if you have too many, it won't be consistent. The brand won't have its own identity. It would be overwhelming. Use spacing effectively. Adequate spacing between letters, words, lines, paragraphs enhances readability and makes your design more visually appealing. Define text styles. Define text styles such as headings, subheadings, body captions, and call to actions to create consistency and streamline your design process. And as always, consider accessibility. Like in a product where on one of a product of my of the company where I work, as I mentioned before, users are a bit they are not very young, and we more use bold fonts than regular ones. Although it's not very aesthetically beautiful, but it helps users to read properly. And as always, test and iterate. Test your typography in different contexts and devices to ensure it performs well, and make necessary adjustment if there is some trouble with it. Okay, the next one would be grids. Grids are another essential part of the design system because they provide consistency, efficiency, hierarchy of the layout, enable responsive design, and improve accessibility. By using grids, designer can create effective and engaging designs that are easy to use and understand. Define a consistent grid system. A grid system is fundamental part of a design system. Use rule of thirds. Basically divide your screen into 9 equal parts and use it to create balanced composition and guide the placement of elements. As usually, maintain consistency. Ensure the grid is consistent throughout the design system. This ensures that user experience is consistent and easy to understand. Use white space effectively. White space elements can improve readability. Ensure the spacing between elements is consistent and follows the grid system. Think responsive. Think how your grid would adapt on each platform. Is it 12 on web, 8 on tablet, and 4 on phone? I'm talking about columns. Or is it like in odd numbers, like 9, 6, and 3? Like it depends on your brand, product, and what you want to represent. But always think about the responsiveness. As usually, consider accessibility. Ensure that grid system is accessible to all users, including those with visual impairments. Use high contrast color, font sizes, and spacing that comply with accessibility standards. And as always, test and iterate in different contexts, devices to ensure that it performs well on all the platforms. Now let us talk about what to avoid when creating or maintaining a design system. So don't be inconsistent. As I said it 100 times already, consistency is a crucial part of the design system. Avoid inconsistency in typography, in colors, in spacing, in other elements. Don't design in silos. Design in collaboration with other designers, developers, and stakeholders to ensure the design system is effective and meet the user needs. Don't be too rigid. While consistency is important, don't be too rigid. Allow for flexibility and creativity within the design system. Sometimes you need this, but we'll get back to that later. Don't overlook accessibility. Accessibility should be a top priority in the design system. Ensure the design system is accessible to all users. Like I said a lot of times today already. And as usually, don't neglect testing. When it's okay to be inconsistent. Okay, you can be inconsistent. For example, when you want to emphasize some important information, inconsistency can be used to draw attention to an important part, or action, or text, or whatever it is. Another, basically, another situation where you when it's kind of okay to be inconsistent if you want to break up the monotony, it again can be used to accentuate something you want to accentuate. Third case would be experimentation. You can experiment with some inconsistency that can lead to new ideas and approaches, and then you can test it. Maybe users would like it, and maybe you would think to involve that in the design system. And lastly, if you want some differentiation, some element to completely be opposite of the everything you have in the design system, it very rarely happens, but sometimes you might need that. The multiple platforms. Dealing with components across multiple platforms requires careful planning, collaboration, and ongoing communication. By following these design tips, you can create a design system that is effective, efficient, and scalable across different platforms. First of all, define platform specific guidelines. Uh, Take them into account. Always remember, iOS users are used to iOS modals, buttons, placements, and everything, and Android to Android and web to web. So basically, always consider this. Use shared design language. Use shared design language that can be used across all the platforms. This ensures consistency and makes it easier to maintain the design system. Use a modular approach, basically the atomic design we talked about before. In that way, you can reuse your components, and for Android, you could have your Android components. For iOS, you could have iOS components. Again, collaborate with developers. Maybe there are some technical issues with implementing one solution on iOS rather than on Android, and always be in touch with developers, because you might design something for a long time and it turns out that it's really hard to implement or impossible to implement on the specific device. Again, test and iterate as usually. Test and iterate uh, on different platforms, see how user responds, see how design system works, is it efficient, is it effective, and lastly, establish version control, because especially if you're working on different platforms, versioning is really important, because someday iOS can bring up a new feature, like a search bar of Safari can go to the bottom, and basically a lot of things changes there. And if you're not a user like me who brought the search bar back to the top because I'm not comfortable, I don't know why, although it seems more accessible, but I'm more comfortable with the older way. But usually users, especially the iOS users, are they are for the trends. So try to always keep in mind the versioning. File organization can be challenging process, but there are some tips that can help you. First of all, establish a clear naming system, a clear file and folder system, so it would be easy to access, find and access. Uh, the second part would be use a centralized design system, a centralized system that is accessible to all the team members. This ensures that everybody is working for the design system and reduces the risk of inconsistencies. Define roles and responsibilities. Define roles and responsibilities for each team member to ensure that everyone knows what is expected of them. This helps to streamline the review process and ensures that everybody is working effectively towards the same goal. Schedule regular reviews. You need this to be updated. You all have to have regular meetings. You have to talk about all the needs of the stakeholders, get some feedback, do some updates and adjustment, and the team should know about this. So again, there wouldn't be any inconsistencies and later some problems. Use a version control. Use a version control system to keep track of changes and ensure that everybody is working from the same version. This helps to reduce the risk of errors and inconsistencies. Implement a clear review process. Implementing a clear review and getting the feedback from team members and stakeholders ensures the design system is meeting the needs of all the parties involved. And prioritize the communication. Incorporating a design system into an already ongoing big product. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. Unfortunately, most of the time we encounter these and not the fancy way, starting from the scratch, which is really cool and fun and interesting. But there are some ways to incorporate the design system to a big product which doesn't have any at all. First of all, you have to conduct a design audit. You have to audit every single part of the design, every element, every component. Like I even did once, like s- compared uh, about hundreds of rows of code to differentiate what every single type of gray there was in the color palette, and I had to reduce those to approximately about the 10 I left there. So define the roadmap. Define design system roadmap that outlines the process for creating and implementing the design system. Roadmap should include timeline, goals, and milestones for the design system implementation. Involve stakeholders in the design system creation process, including designers, developers, and other key team members. This ensures that everyone is invested in the success of the design system and that meets the needs of all the parties involved. Create a style guide. Style guide that outlines the design system component, including typography, color, spacing, other elements. Uh, it should be accessible to all team members and used as a reference for creating new designs. Prioritize components, which is important, which is not very important for the first iteration, and go by priorities. And and of course, start small. You can't change a big ongoing product with many users in one go. It's impossible, almost impossible. Start small by implementing on a small scale, such as a single page or a section of a product. This allows for tasting, iteration, and understanding what works, what doesn't, and then you can go on and slowly incorporate the system. Now let's go to the inspirations. Where do we draw the inspiration? Well, there are many design systems out there by various companies, frameworks, philosophies. We'll take the biggest out there. First and foremost, material design. Every person who has ever worked with a design system knows knows Google's material design. Basically, they have clearly defined design system guides. It's written in details of all the all the do's and don'ts, what shouldn't work, what should work, and basically you can even see the sizes of elements there. Basically, Google Material has a grid based layout, responsive animations. It's inspired by physical world using such materials as paper and ink and create sense of depth and hierarchy in the design. The second would be human interface guidelines, which of course belongs to Apple. It's a set of design principles and guidelines created by the Apple for designing apps for iOS and macOS platforms. The design guidelines covers a wide range of topics, including typography, color iconography, layout, and navigation. Goal of HIG is to provide a consistent and intuitive user experience across all Apple devices by ensuring that apps adhere to certain design standards and principles. The human interface guidelines are regularly updated to reflect changes in technology and user expectation, and developers are encouraged to use the latest version of the guidelines when designing their apps. The third one is IBM's Carbone. It emphasizes modularity, scalability, and accessibility. It inspired by human-centered design and incorporate IBM's design principles such as clarity, simplicity, and consistency. Fluent Design System. Fluent Design System is a design language developed by Microsoft that emphasizes the use of light, depth, motion, materiality, and in the design. Fluent Design System is inspired by physical world using materials such as glass and light to create the sense of depth and hierarchy in the design. And Design System. And Design System is a design system developed by Ant Financial and Alibaba Group. It emphasizes simplicity, consistency, and efficiency, and inspired by material design and other design systems. Most of the developers I know they are in love with Ant Design System because they say it's really easy to implement. And of course, Bootstrap, which is a popular design system that provides a framework for developing responsive mobile-first websites. It is inspired by material design and other modern design systems. There are lots of more giants out there, such as Uber, Airbnb, Atlassian. There are many of them, and I really advise you to Google and look for the best design system there are and see what you like, in which what elements do you like, and maybe you can incorporate some of them in your system. Unfortunately, there is not enough time to dive any deeper, but design system is such a topic that it can You can talk about it endlessly. But I hope I could give some insights and motivation for you to create the next greatest design system for the world to see. Now, I wish you all good luck, be safe, and be successful.